right. What I thought I'd do is that if it's not just enough reason to turn to Beyond to help you manage multiple properties, having to balance the pricing demands that come with it, why not actually hear from other SuperControl agency users for their expert opinions? For example, we've got a number of different case studies on our websites that are specific to agencies, and that could be 15 plus properties or even more. But this is just one I've chosen. So, for example, Orion Holidays, they're located in the Cotswolds. It's an independent family-run holiday home letting business, and they've got over 60 properties. Now, for them to keep up with the evolving market and optimize their revenue, they decided to integrate with Beyond Dynamics pricing system and obviously using it through SuperControl. The reason behind them actually doing this, the move was aimed at overcoming the challenges of traditional annual pricing and basically trying to enhance their competitive edge. Not only was managing seasonal pricing manually a cumbersome and imprecise task, it often resulted in prices that really didn't reflect what was happening in the market accurately. The other thing that chatted to them about was negotiating discounts during those shoulder months with the property owners was also a bit of time consuming and contentious process, because it's trying to get your owners to change their prices in a way that is also still going to generate revenue for yourselves as well as themselves. And obviously there's those discussions in terms of occupancy. So what they did is that they decided to go and use Beyond Dynamics pricing system. And this was because it offered the solution of seasonal pricing adjustments while still allowing Orion Holidays to retain their control by setting minimums and maximums and ensuring their prices were actually aligned with the demand and market trends. This integration not only provided them with the necessary tools to adjust their prices dynamically based on market conditions, what happened is that in the end, it led them to having a 9% increase in venue and a 2% higher daily rate compared to year-on-year data performance from the year before. So from, in this case, 2023. And also, as we've mentioned before, one of the things that they even noticed was that the new pricing model facilitated better communication with the property owners because it was an automated system that allowed them to really set clear and justifiable prices. So, and this obviously improved the relationships with their owners and meant that there was a consistent revenue management system. And obviously this benefited both Orion Holidays as well as their property owners. And just let you know that our data analyst has also been diligently analyzing the data in the background. And we're actually excited to share that SuperControl agency accounts that have been using and leveraging Beyond Dynamics pricing integration feature are consistently experiencing significant revenue growth across their entire portfolios. And this is month after month. So for example, using 2024 data, we can see that we started off with a bit of a quiet season. So in January and February, properties generated up to about 39% more revenue. And this obviously translated to an additional £183 all the way up to £305 per property. And that's money in your back pocket. And this was then followed by a little bit of a spring growth. So by April, the properties saw like an average increase of £451 per month. So this is making a 32% boost compared to their traditional manual pricing approaches that other agency accounts were using. And then again allowed that peak season optimization. So even during the busy months of July and August, the dynamic pricing contributed to extra money because those times were in demand. It meant that you could just add that little bit of leverage on because it's an in-demand time. And so they made an extra £304 to £367 per property listing. These findings really highlight the powerful impact of dynamic pricing on revenue generation throughout the year. In wrapping up today's presentations, I just want to say thank you very, very much, Lizzie, for not only sharing your expertise, but also your insights into how Beyond can help our agency account owners not only maximize their earnings, but also save with that automated adjustment. So there's none of that manual pricing and tweakings and heavy liftings that you need to do. Rather, it's all done by the Beyond tool. And obviously, this gives you more time to focus on other aspects of your business, whatever it may be. Maybe it's on marketing, maybe it's on finding new business, etc. And then also obviously ensuring that your property is not only priced right, but it means that you'll never fall behind any of your local competitors. And so you never miss out on potential bookings, basically just because of outdated rates. And then obviously we've mentioned that you're still in charge. You set the base rate, you adjust the pricing rules, and you have full visibility on how your rates are being adjusted all the time. And you've shown us that really easy to use dashboard that allows you to see exactly how your pricing is working and working in real time. So you can compare to 2023 data, for example, if you're in 2024, and you can predict hopefully what is going to happen in the future. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the floor to some questions. I'm going to have a look and see if there were any that were raised during that time period. I can see we've got one question. I will ask you, Lizzie, if you wouldn't mind helping me out with this one. Scott has asked, regarding setting minimum and maximum prices, isn't it Beyond's job to suggest those?
It's a brilliant, brilliant question. And this is it. I think one thing that we want to do is be certain that we're not setting rates that you're not happy with. And so that's where we really want to get insights from, what your goals are, what you are happy with, and what you can afford. Because I think sometimes, people can afford to be a little bit more flexible, and other people may have, more refined expectations when it comes to what their minimum or maximums are set at. So we can still
Yes.
make recommendations, but it's always still working in partnership. And it comes back to that point about, you still having control and having that input because you know them and the nuance around those listings in a finer level of detail. So we can always make the recommendations on the data, but taking on that nuance as well.
Exactly, exactly. You know how unique your listing is and what you have that others don't have that make it unique and so make it the ultimate destination for your guest. Okay, we've got another question from, and she says, do you take local events when adjusting prices and how is this done if so?
Of course, yes. So with our markets, we actually have them broken down into what we call clusters. And what we're always looking to do is to have events that are relevant to those markets and also those clusters. I think a really clear example is when we're looking at like London. We've got over 90 different clusters across London because we know different neighborhoods, different boroughs are going to have completely different guest preferences, different events in the market that are going to impact the way that the guest behaves as well. So we have our revenue management team. They hand draw those different markets and those different clusters, and then they're looking at the data, what's going on in those markets as well, specific events. And they do look to label those, but also, for example, if they're not sure exactly what the specific name of the event is, they're still looking at where there might be those increases in demand that maybe it's due to a wedding, for example, in the market that might be an unusual peak. So we're still looking to be aware of where they're happening and how we can adjust the demand data as well.
Fabulous. There's another question here from, I can actually answer this. It says, how often are prices updated? So Beyond send us prices daily, and these are updated to the database on a daily basis. However, we do, if, for example, you believe that it needs to be refreshed, there is the option to go and push the data again from Beyond to us. If, for example, you make a change to your system, changing your minimum maximum price, for example. The next is from an anonymous attendee. Do you have to monitor the Beyond price dashboard and update prices for different seasons?
Great question. So obviously we know that different seasons may come with different expectations, let's say, from a listing. So what we would look to do is at the sort of outset, address that and be aware of maybe the nuance of the market or the listing, depending on, which season we're in and what we would maybe expect. And so at the outset, we'd look to sort of establish those customizations that I mentioned in order to capture the differences that we maybe would see across different seasons. That being said, it doesn't mean that those things might not change in future. And so we would still recommend that you do go into the system and, work with our team to monitor changes and look for further opportunity to optimize performance, as opposed to it being like a set once and never look at it ever again
Ever
and a
again.
set and forget. We do recommend that you go in and review that. But what we actually have is an onboarding process, typically of 4 weeks, where we would already start considering how maybe different seasons will impact the reality for the listings and start to already build those from the very beginning.
Okay, so we've got a couple more questions. He has just mentioned that he's an agent with 30 cottages. So if Beyond is primarily analyzing Airbnb and other online travel agent data, then are they picking up on uplifted prices?
Of course, yeah, brilliant. So as you've said, we are pulling scrape data from OTAs. So we're taking that from Airbnb, VRBO, and also Booking.com, which isn't always the case for some systems. So what we're doing when we're looking at this is we are taking information on the prices that are pushed, but the core aspect we're focusing on is actually the demand. So where there's the occupancy, because what we don't always have visibility on. And what can be hard to decipher is what the goals are of each listing, or maybe the uniqueness of each listing, which is going to have an impact on the rates that are ultimately pushed. So when we're looking at OTA data, primarily focusing on the demand data. And then what we are considering is also what we call our partner data. So we're enriching that data set as well. So we've got a clearer view on the demand. And as you say, we've got the awareness that often people are applying that uplift to rates. So we are considering, the rates that we're setting in beyond. We're considering, okay, what is the uplift that we're going to apply to the various OTAs once those rates have been pushed out, by a SuperControl as well. So these are all factors that we're taking into consideration when we're reviewing the data that we're scraping from the market, so that we've got a clearer image on that.
Okay, great. That makes a lot of sense. How localized beyond a search for comparable pricing? For example, Mark says that he's in a great area for weekend getaways away from London, but it's in a rural area, which is about 45 minutes from the seaside, which is a completely different dynamic from a city break versus that of a country break.
So I think, just to understand this question, I'm taking this is, how do we maybe approach the different demands, like coming from different demographic of guests? So maybe there's those people from the seaside, or people that are, coming from the rural. And what we're always looking to do is, when we're building those markets or building those clusters, is sort of identify the demand data there. So, for example, if people are coming for those weekend breaks, we're going to see in the weekday demand data that we're getting these regular peaks and troughs, where we're getting localized demand during the weekends. And so that's going to drive how we adjust our pricing strategy around those. Whereas, for example, if you had a cluster that was based on the seaside, as you say, maybe the dynamics or the expectations of the guests are slightly different. That's going to be represented in the demand data. And so we'd look to account for that, and also look at like the uniqueness of the listings. What kind of amenities? Has it got a sea view, or is it, like you say, based in a rural area that's very remote? And how do we then price it accordingly to reflect that?
Exactly. He has popped in an extra question there. Should we be setting short breaks or minimum stays in SuperControl or in Beyond? Within our integration with Beyond, you have the option to use LOS, or length of stay, and you can set that data within SuperControl. And we also have what we call a percentage model that you can also utilize. And if you have any questions specific to this, I'm happy to address those via ticket or via phone call. We've got 2 more questions from you. Says he doesn't have hot tubs, coffee pots, saunas, golf on site, swimming pools, or beachfront, but I do have a fabulous medieval house that's overbrimming with original character in a tiny, totally unspoiled medieval hamlet. Can this kind of attribute also be taken into account in Beyond?
Yeah, so again, it's always about reflecting the uniqueness of your listing. So that's what we look to capture when we're creating those base prices that are supported by your input. So explaining, what kind of historic data, what's the standout aspects of your listing, and then combining that with like the market data to understand what's driving demand and what can we sort of ask for by bringing all that information together. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily matter if you don't have hot tubs or coffee pods. It's always just about capturing what you do have, and how that, stands out within the local market accordingly as well.
Fabulous. Okay. Questions. So she's busy asking, and does seasonal discounts and SuperControl also connect to Beyond pricing? So the way that the connection works is that you set up your pricing to do in Beyond, and Beyond then sends the pricing through to us. Then what happens is that if a guest is going to be booking on your website cart, and this will be based on all of the preferences within it. So if you've got discounts set up in SuperControl, it will bring those through. So you still can use discounts within SuperControl. Those 2 things work in conjunction with one another. Somebody asked, do you do pricing per property? So it's based on a property listing down. So it's based on a property. So that is how it is set up within SuperControl, and therefore how it would be created within Beyond as well. The 2 things correspond with one another. And the last question was, when bookings come in, if they're not processed on the same day, how can we check what the gross rental charge was? What happens within the booking itself as well? There will be a pricing history which will show you what the pricing was and when the booking was taken. So obviously it's reflected at that time and date that the booking was taken, and obviously what the prices were in Beyond on that date and time. So you do have that information within a booking. You can go and look into it. You can see in the pricing history exactly what has happened. Right. We have answered all of those questions. Thank you so much, Lizzie, again for your time and giving us great insights into how Beyond integration can help us and help agencies in terms of not only generating revenue, but also in terms of answering those questions that they are indefinitely going to be asking. So our session has now concluded and it's time for your feedback. And as always, we're all ears and can't wait to hear your thoughts. Your insights are incredibly important to us and will help to shape the future of our SuperScholar program. In fact, it's been your client voice that has driven the creation of these more agency-specific webinars in our SuperScholar program. Please don't hesitate to share your views on what you loved, where we can improve. And again, thank you for being an integral part of our learning journey today. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a lovely day.
Thank you so much.